My family said my graduation wasn't worth attending, then threw a lavish party for my sister's promotion. Months later, they asked me to co-sign a loan, and I finally said, find someone more worth your time. I read it. I'm 28M, and for most of my life, I've kept my head down and played the role expected of me. Polite, quiet, non-confrontational. You know the type. The one who doesn't stir the pot, even when they're clearly getting the short end of the stick. I've been called mature for my age since I was old enough to understand the words. But the truth is, I wasn't mature. I was just trained not to complain. This story starts around the time I was finishing my master's degree last year. But to really understand the context, I need to take you a little further back. I grew up in what people on the outside would probably describe as a picture-perfect family. My mom, Mary, is the kind of woman who always looks like she's hosting a magazine photo shoot, perfectly ironed clothes, hair that never moves, a smile that looks warm until you realize it never quite reaches her eyes. She used to be a school administrator, very respected in the community, and she took pride in how our family looked, not necessarily how it actually was. My dad, James, is quieter but not in the same way I am. He's the type who lets my mom take the wheel on most things and only speaks up to agree with her or smooth over the sharp edges of whatever she said. He's not cruel, exactly, but he's willfully passive, and in our family, that made him complicit in a lot. Then there's Corinne, my older sister. She's 31 now, but she's been running the show since she was old enough to speak in complete sentences. Corinne has this way of making everything about her, and not in a loud, obvious way either. She does it subtly, like she's performing and doesn't want the audience to know they're being manipulated. She's smart, ambitious, and has always had this charm that my parents eat up like candy. I, on the other hand, was the quiet kid. I didn't get into trouble, didn't ask for much. I liked books, puzzles, being outside. I didn't really shine the way Corinne did, but I was content, or at least I thought I was. My parents never said anything outright, but over the years, it became clear that Corinne's accomplishments were just more valuable. When she got into business school, there was a dinner party. When I got into engineering, a good for you and a pat on the back. Now, I want to make something clear. I'm not jealous of my sister's success. She worked hard for her career, and I don't begrudge her that. What stings is how my family, especially my parents, built a whole pedestal for her and barely acknowledged me unless I was useful to them. I spent most of my life thinking, maybe if I just try a little harder, they'll see me too. So, fast forward to last year. After years of juggling part-time work, late-night study sessions, and more coffee than I care to admit, I finished my master's in environmental engineering. It was a quiet kind of victory. No cheering crowds, no banner or balloons, just me in my tiny apartment staring at the final grade report and realizing I did it. I told my parents the next day. I called my mom while walking home from campus, the graduation ceremony still a few weeks away. "Hi, Mom. I've got some news," I said, trying to keep my voice casual but hopeful. "Oh," she replied, distracted. I could hear her stirring something in a pot. "Did you get another job offer?" "No, not yet. But I just finished my program. I'm graduating next month with honors, actually." There was a beat of silence. "Well, that's good, sweetheart," she said. "Though I thought most of your classes were online. Are they even doing a ceremony for that sort of thing?" "They are. It's small, but I get 2 guest passes. I'd really love it if you and Dad could come." Another pause. Longer this time. "Oh, that's the same weekend Curran's company is announcing promotions, I think," she said, voice suddenly lighter, more animated. "She's in line for senior associate. Isn't that exciting?" She didn't say no, but she also didn't say yes. When I asked her again a few days later, she said they were playing things by ear. Translation: don't count on it. The day of my graduation came, and no, they didn't show. I wore my cap and gown, took a few photos by the science building, and walked across the stage to polite applause from strangers. My roommate Ben and my friend Salma came, which meant the world to me, but it was hard not to notice the empty seats where my parents could have been. I told myself to move on. It's just a ceremony, right? It doesn't mean anything. Or at least, that's what I kept repeating in my head like a mantra. But then, less than a week later, I opened my phone and nearly dropped it. There, plastered across my mom's Facebook and Instagram, were photos from a full-blown backyard celebration. White tents, fairy lights, catered food. A banner that read "Congratulations, Corinne." My sister stood at the center of it all in a designer dress, grinning like the queen of some small country. My parents were right beside her, beaming, flutes of sparkling cider in hand. I didn't even know she'd been promoted yet. I scrolled through picture after picture. It looked like a wedding reception. Tables set with centerpieces, a custom cake in the shape of her firm's logo, and even tiny printed cards that said Team Corinne. There had to be at least 30 people there. The kicker? My mom had captioned one photo, so proud of our shining star. Corinne's hard work continues to inspire us every day. I didn't know what to feel. It wasn't just that they hadn't come to my graduation. It was the fact that they could have. They just chose not to. That night, I didn't call them. I didn't congratulate Corinne. I didn't even open the group chat. I started pulling away slowly. Calls became shorter. Texts went unanswered. I focused on applying for jobs, interviewing, setting up a new life that didn't orbit around waiting for someone else to notice me. It wasn't some big declaration, just a quiet exit. Or so I thought. But a few months later, right when I was finally starting to feel okay about everything, I got a message from my dad. "Hey bud, can we talk soon? Something we want to run by you." No context. Just that. I stared at it for a long time before replying. I had no idea what they wanted, not yet. But I had this gnawing feeling in my gut that whatever it wasn't going to be small. And I was right. So after I got that vague text from my dad, "Hey bud, can we talk soon? Something we want to run by you," I waited a day before replying. I wasn't in the mood to open any emotional doors they might be knocking on. Eventually, I just replied with a neutral, "Sure. I'm free Sunday afternoon." No emojis. No warmth. Just facts. Sunday rolled around and right at 2 p.m., my phone rang. My dad's name popped up on the screen, and I sat there for a second, staring at it. A part of me still wanted it to be something simple, maybe even an apology or a subtle acknowledgement that they'd messed up. But no. I picked up and immediately heard both of them on speaker. "Hey, honey," my mom chirped, always with that artificially sweet tone she uses when she wants something. "Thanks for taking time for us." I could already feel my stomach tightening. My dad cut in. "We'll keep this short. We know you're busy. But we have an opportunity that just came up, and we think it could be good for the whole family." That phrase, "good for the whole family," is my mom's favorite way to frame something that will, 9 times out of 10, benefit only Corinne. I didn't say anything. I just waited. So my mom began, drawing it out. "Your sister and Ethan, you know, her fiancé, they've been house hunting." This wasn't news. I'd seen Corinne post photos of houses on her Instagram story, always followed by polls like which kitchen is more US, with her face plastered in the corner. But I stayed quiet. "They found one they love," she continued, "but they're just a little short on the bank's requirements. Nothing major. It's all about paperwork and formalities. You know how it is." That's when my dad chimed in again. "They just need a co-signer. Someone reliable with good credit. Not for the whole mortgage, just to make the bank happy. Your name would help a lot." There was this silence. Like they were waiting for me to jump in, say of course. Anything for my perfect sister. But I didn't say anything right away. I just blinked. Slowly. My mom, sensing I hadn't quite taken the bait, added, "It's really just a signature, sweetheart. You won't be paying anything. Corinne and Ethan have everything covered. It's just that your credit score is, well, cleaner." Cleaner. That word sat with me. "Why not co-sign it yourselves?" I asked, voice calm. There was a beat of silence, and then a too-fast reply. "Well, your father and I already have some obligations, and we were advised not to take on anything new right now. Nothing to worry about." Right. Obligations. That probably meant the cabin they bought last year and only told me about after they'd already signed the papers. You know, the one they gushed about in the Christmas letter but never once invited me to visit. My dad cleared his throat. "Look, we wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. This is Corinne's future we're talking about." There it was again, Corinne's future. Like my own didn't matter. I let a few seconds pass. "So let me get this straight," I said, finally. "You didn't come to my graduation. You didn't acknowledge it beyond a passing comment. You threw a party for Corinne that looked like a catered gala. And now, a few months later, the first real conversation you've had with me is asking for my credit?" The line went quiet. "That's not fair," my mom said sharply, the sweetness peeling away from her voice like wet paint. "We've always supported you in our own way." Our own way was her version of, "We gave you food and a roof growing up. What more do you want?" My dad tried to smooth it over. "It's just a formality, son. It's not personal." But it was personal. Every decision they made was personal. Who they chose to celebrate. Who they chose to ignore. Who got their attention, their money, their time. And now they wanted my signature because I was useful. Not because I was loved. Not because they respected me. But because I had something they needed. I took a breath. "I'll think about it," I said quietly. Not because I actually needed to think. I already knew my answer. But I needed space to respond in a way that they wouldn't see coming. They thanked me too cheerfully and hung up a few minutes later. I sat there on my couch, staring at the floor. Not sad. Not angry. Just clear. They weren't villains in a movie. They didn't wear black capes or shout threats. They wore polite smiles, said the right things in front of the right people, and quietly made it known who mattered and who didn't. The week after that call, I didn't say a word to them. Not a single text. Not a call. Nothing. I knew they were waiting, probably assuming I'd come around, like I always used to when they needed something. I could imagine my mom saying something like, "He just needs time to feel appreciated. He'll come through." Because that's what I used to do. But this time, I wasn't going to play the role they cast me in. Instead, I made an appointment with my financial advisor. Nothing dramatic. Just wanted to double-check what it would actually mean to co-sign on a house for someone. I already knew the basics, but I wanted specifics. Potential liabilities. Impact on my credit. Worst-case scenarios. My advisor, a patient man named Bernard who always wore vests no matter the weather, didn't sugarcoat it. Technically, yes, it's just a signature, he said, but that signature is binding. If they miss a payment, that becomes your problem. It'll show up on your credit report. You'll be legally responsible. And you can't just walk away from that, not without consequences. I nodded. I already knew that, but hearing it laid out with no fluff solidified everything for me. By the time I left Bernard's office, I wasn't conflicted anymore. I wasn't hesitant. I wasn't nervous. I was ready. A few days later, I received a group text from my mom. It was short and sweet, just like her. "Hi kids. Sunday dinner at 6. Come hungry." Smiley face. I almost laughed. Classic move. Pretend everything's normal. Keep up the image. No mention of the favor. No mention of graduation. Just come hungry, like we were all one big happy family. Corinne replied within seconds. "Can't wait." Bringing Ethan. Smiley face. I typed out a simple, "I'll be there." I wasn't coming for the food. I was coming with purpose. Sunday came. I wore a pressed button-down shirt and showed up exactly on time. Their house, the one I grew up in, looked just as I remembered it. Immaculate lawn, potted plants on the porch, the little stone plaque that read, "Home is where the heart is." Funny, that house never felt like home to me. Not really. I walked in without knocking, like always. My mom was in the kitchen, fussing over a roast, while my dad was in his usual recliner, reading some article on his tablet like it was the newspaper. Corinne was perched on the edge of the couch with Ethan, laughing at something he said. It was eerie, honestly, how normal they all tried to act. Like none of the past few years happened. Like they hadn't skipped my graduation or thrown a full-blown garden party for Corinne's job title. Like they hadn't called me out of the blue after months of silence just to ask for my credit score. "Hey, kiddo," my dad said, not looking up. My mom gave me one of her sugar syrup smiles. "Glad you made it," she said. "We missed you." I just smiled. "Sure you did." Dinner was awkward in the way only forced family gatherings can be. Everyone made small talk. My mom complimented Corinne's nails twice. My dad asked Ethan about interest rates, and they nodded sagely at each other like they were part of some secret society of men who understood real estate. I didn't say much until dessert. My mom had just set down a peach cobbler and said, "So, honey, did you think about our little request?" I took a slow sip of water and looked around the table. They all turned to me, expectant, hopeful, confident, as if this was a formality, as if my approval was already in the bag. I set down my glass. "I did." Corinne smiled. "We really appreciate you considering it. We know you're, like, super responsible." Ethan chuckled. "Yeah, man, it's honestly just a piece of paper. But your name would mean the world." I looked straight at my parents. I decided not to co-sign. The silence was immediate. My mom blinked. "Excuse me. I'm not co-signing anything. I won't risk my credit or finances so Corinne and Ethan can play house." Corinne scoffed. "Wow. Okay. That's really selfish." That word again. Selfish. From the woman who had a catered promotion party with a champagne tower and Instagram reels. "I'm not being selfish," I said, my voice even. "I'm being smart. I've worked hard to build a stable life for myself, and I'm not throwing that away for people who haven't earned my trust." My mom's smile had disappeared. Her tone turned cold. "We're family. Families help each other." I nodded. "They do, but only when it's mutual. And you've made it very clear, over and over again, that I'm not part of this family in the same way Corinne is." My dad set down his fork. "That's enough." "No," I said, "it's not. You didn't show up to my graduation. You didn't even ask how it went. But you had a backyard decorated with fairy lights and a slideshow for Corinne's promotion. You say you support me in your own way, but the only time I get a call is when you need something." Corinne rolled her eyes. "Not everything is about you." I looked right at her. "Exactly. It never is. That's the problem." Then I stood up. And just before I walked out, I said, "Find someone more worth your time. I'm sure your real child will help you." and I left. But that wasn't the end. Because the next day, I got a message from a mutual family friend, someone who had been there through birthdays and holidays, someone who remembered my graduation date even if my own family didn't. It was a screenshot. Corinne had made a post, a very pointed post, a photo of her and Ethan in front of a house with a for sale sign, captioned, "When people say no, we make our own yes." Hashtag grind on T-stop, hashtag manifesting. The post didn't surprise me. Corinne always had a flair for appearances. That house was just another prop, another stage for her and Ethan to play the roles of hardworking, successful young couple, all image, no substance. But I didn't comment. I didn't like it. I didn't say a word. Instead, I did something that would quietly set everything in motion. You see, while they were busy posting hashtags and fake optimism, I had taken Bernard's advice one step further. He'd introduced me to a contact of his, a real estate attorney. Out of pure curiosity, at first, I asked what someone could do if they found out a family member was using their name in financial discussions without permission. Hypothetically, of course. I expected her to give me vague reassurances. Instead, she got serious. If your name was being used, even just discussed, with a lender under the assumption you'd co-sign, and you didn't agree to that in writing, it's a problem. And if they went forward without notifying you, or even forged anything, that's fraud. It happens more than you'd think. I sat with that for a few days. Then, about a week after the dinner, I got a call from a bank. Not my bank. A lender I'd never used. The representative asked to speak with me regarding my recent loan application with Ethan and Corinne. My blood went cold. I calmly explained that I had never applied for any such loan. They were confused, said my name and basic information had already been submitted. Thankfully, the bank was cautious enough to verify my identity before moving forward. Once they realized something was off, they promised to put a pause on everything and investigate. I thanked them and hung up. I was quiet that night. I didn't sleep much. Because in that moment, I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was furious. Furious that they would go that far. That they thought I was disposable enough to be used like that. The next morning, I compiled everything. Texts, screenshots, the bank rep's name, a detailed report. I sent it to the real estate attorney. She responded that same day. This isn't just unethical. This could land them in serious legal trouble. She filed a formal report with the lender and flagged my name to prevent any future attempts. Then I made a decision. I wasn't going to let this slide. Not again. I sent one final message in the family group chat. Simple and clear. I know what you did. The bank called me. I've spoken with a lawyer. Do not contact me again. Corinne responded almost immediately. You're seriously overreacting. We didn't even finalize anything. Why are you being so dramatic? My mother chimed in next. This is unnecessary, she wrote. You're dragging family into things that should stay private. Just be reasonable. I read it once, then again, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something resembling an apology. But of course, they didn't. They never do with her. The message wasn't about concern or reflection, it was control. The guilt woven into every line, the polished phrasing, the subtle scolding disguised as maternal wisdom. I could almost hear her voice saying it out loud, as if I were still a teenager getting lectured for embarrassing her in front of the neighbors. To her, I was the one who broke something sacred. Not Ethan, not Corinne. Not even the part where they had used my name, my identity, without consent. That didn't matter. What mattered to her was that I talked. That I'd stepped outside the family script and dared to speak to someone who could hold them accountable. She didn't say she was sorry. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't even deny what they'd done. She just told me to be reasonable. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The silence said everything. And I think, in their own way, they finally understood that I wasn't bluffing this time. A few weeks later, I heard from someone we'd gone to high school with, a girl I'd never been close with but who kept tabs on everyone through Facebook and occasional run-ins at the local grocery store. She messaged me out of nowhere. Hey, not sure if you heard, but your sister's house thing fell through? She was posting about it nonstop last month. Just stopped suddenly. Something happened. I stared at the message for a while, unsure whether to laugh or shake my head. Corinne hadn't said a word publicly. Not one post about the disappointment, no bittersweet caption about timing not being right. She just let it quietly vanish, like a magician slipping a failed trick behind the curtain. What I learned, eventually, was that they'd gone ahead with submitting the paperwork. Without my signature, of course, the application was flimsy at best. And when the bank reached out to confirm my cosigner status and found out I hadn't agreed to anything, they froze the process entirely. Then came the internal review. Then the legal hold. One by one, the lenders they approached afterwards started backing away. There were whispers, nothing formal, nothing they could prove, but enough to raise eyebrows. Their names were flagged. And without me to pad their numbers, their credit profiles were exposed for what they were: overextended, inconsistent, and underwhelming. They hadn't prepared for the possibility of rejection. They thought their story, the pretty couple, the supportive family, would be enough. It wasn't. So the dream home, the staged photos of keys in hand, the welcome mat on a freshly poured porch? Gone. No walk-in closet. No weekend parties in the backyard. Just the old apartment, the paper-thin walls, and a sour grudge that probably lingered in the air like burnt toast. But it didn't end there. A few weeks later, I started getting calls from a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring out. Then again. I blocked it. A few days later, another. Then came the email. It was from my mother. It was long, almost 2 full pages of carefully crafted sentences. Not one word of accountability. No mention of Curran's manipulation or the favor they tried to twist into a demand. No acknowledgement of the betrayal. Instead, it was drenched in sentimentality, phrases like "family should stick together" and "you're punishing people for mistakes that came from love." She wrote as though she were the one abandoned, as though I had inflicted some great wound on her by choosing distance. She called me ungrateful, said I was holding on to resentment like it was a prize. "No one is perfect," she wrote near the end, "but we've always been a family. I hope you'll remember that before it's too late." Not once did she say, "I'm sorry," not for skipping my graduation, not for dismissing my achievements, not for reducing me to a fallback plan for Corinne's future, and certainly not for allowing her to nearly drag me into financial ruin without a shred of warning. Instead, the letter framed it all as my fault. My silence, my boundaries, my unwillingness to pretend everything was fine. So I didn't reply. Not then. Not now. And slowly, the messages stopped. Like they decided it was no longer worth the effort. Like I had proven their point, that I was selfish, dramatic, cold. Fine. Let them believe it. The holidays came and went. I didn't go home. I didn't send gifts. I didn't even acknowledge their existence. When extended family asked, I gave polite but clipped responses. "No, we haven't spoken. I'm doing well, thanks." I spent New Year's Eve in a small apartment with friends, the kind who brought over hot cocoa and old movies, who didn't ask me to perform or explain myself. We sat on the floor in sweatpants, talked about our plans, our wins and losses, and when the countdown hit 0, I didn't feel regret. I felt peace. That's where I am now. I've moved again, this time into a space that finally feels like it belongs to me, not just legally, but emotionally. No passive-aggressive photo frames. No reminders of dinners where I had to bite my tongue. Just quiet, warm corners. Bookshelves that belong to me. Art I chose. A balcony where I can drink my morning coffee without anyone asking why I don't visit more. I've learned something most people don't want to admit. Blood doesn't automatically equal family. Family is trust. It's consistency. It's respect, even when you're different, even when things are tense. Without that, all you have are people who share a last name and a list of expectations. And when someone shows you over and over that their love is conditional, that their support only extends as far as their own benefit, believe them. As for Corinne and Ethan, still renting, still pretending, still posting their filtered morning routines and vision boards like their foundation isn't full of cracks. They act like everything is fine, like the house wasn't a pipe dream built on borrowed credit and silent manipulation. I don't know if they'll ever get what they want, but I know they won't get it from me. And my parents? They haven't spoken to me directly since. From what I hear, they still host their little Sunday dinners. The same roast chicken, the same polished plates, the same conversations about how I just needed space. They sit at the same table and pretend nothing ever happened. That's fine. They can pretend. But I'm done playing along.